Hello and welcome. This welcome is to everyone who's watching the replay at this point, because although this is a live and I'm hoping there'll be people jumping on, there's no one on board yet. Um, as I'd like to make my custom, I'd like to begin with just a quick prayer and a recognition of the unceded territories from where I'm broadcasting. So, Father God, thank you for everyone that's here today. Would you fill us with creativity, insight, joy, wisdom, new ideas, hope, and would you just bless us to your glory? Amen. And I'd like to recognize that I'm broadcasting from Pitt Meadows, British Columbia, and where I am is on the unceded territories of the Salish, the Stolo, the Kwantlen, and the Katzie First Nations people. And I just want to recognize and mention that. And while it's just me here, why don't I start with just a little introduction of the space I'm operating in, and then I'll get into a little bit about myself, my background, what my vision is, and where I'm hoping to go. And hopefully by then there'll be some other people who are jumping on. I'm not entirely sure about the link I put out there, if it's working to this Zoom session. Normally when I make a Zoom session, I start the session and send the link out directly from that. So signing in afterwards, it's new to me. So hopefully I didn't mess anything up with that. And in the meantime, I'll give you just a quick tour of where I'm at. So where I was is my office space. I love having the dry erase board paint on the walls. It lets me do my brainstorming. And here is my studio. And the studio is lovely because I love the 30-foot ceilings, but it's a flexible open floor space that lets me do all the shenanigans I want to get up to here. So I've got the wrestling mat. I can do wrestling, and I do teach jiu-jitsu and self-defense, but I can also roll up the mat, pull out some tools, and do some workshop activities and like build stuff and get funky that way. And in this space, there's lots of flexibility and possibility for a whole range of things to do. I love having the chalkboard. That's a good medium, and I look forward to getting groups of learners in here that we can make use of that. I also have the projector and a great big wall, which means it's a movie theater in here, which is also great as a classroom setting. So my hope is, as far as the education goes, is to teach a lot of stuff out of here. And to have a lot of different types of classes in here, like from adult classes to school and academic classes. So that's the hope for the space. I'll show you just a couple more things about what I get up to on the actually, let me take a moment right now and begin my introduction. So, as you know, my name's Michael Bruins, and what you may not know is that I've been a teacher for 20 years. I have an honors degree in both physics and mathematics from Trent University. And I've spent most of my career as a math science specialist and math science teacher, but I've pretty much done it all. I've taught just about everything from about grade 6 to grade 12. I've substitute taught in the younger grades as well. I've taught in the private Christian sector. I've taught in the public sector. I've taught in a small K-12 school in a small town in Saskatchewan where I was a teaching principal. I've taught the IB program at Meadow Ridge School, which is an elite private school. So I've been around the block in those ways. Some of the other things I've taught, I've also done a little bit of middle school to do with digital literacy and robotics. I've taught some English, some PE. So my background is pretty diverse. I do consider myself a math and science specialist first, but the other thing that's sort of in play here is I've become an artist in the last year and a half. That wasn't expected, but this studio is also my art studio. So I'll show you just a couple things I'm working on right now. So now when I'm turning the laptop around like this, I can't see what you're seeing on the screen. So I can try and peek here. So this is a piece here that I've been working on for a number of months. There's about 200 hours into that piece, but here's a more recent one. This is one in progress. Let's see if you can see that at all. So this is one that I'm working on currently. And yeah, so that's a little bit about me. Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to really get experimental with what I'd like to do and what I've wanted to do as a teacher for a very long time. So basically, my situation is I've been on a medical leave for a while, and I'm at a position where instead of going back to the classroom full time, I don't feel that that's where I'm being led to go. I feel like I'm being led to go in this new direction, which is to do stuff online and to really rip down the structure that I have been working from as a public educator, and begin to find new ways and new communities to connect with and new ways to do education. So that's where I'm at. This is where I'm coming from. And yeah, so a little bit of my background. So I'm a small town raised kid. My dad's a retired police officer. I grew up in the town of Campbellford, got my education there, did a year to Brazil as an exchange student when I was 17, which was great. Went off to university, got my degree. After I finished my degree in 1993, in the May of 1993, so literally like within a couple weeks after finishing my final exams for my undergraduate degree, I had this vision, and this vision, like it was like this three-dimensional holographic tree that was in my living room. And for about an hour, I could interact with this vision and this holographic tree and explore what it was and understand what it was about. But it was so multidimensional and higher dimensional, and so far ahead of the technology at that day. Like it was overwhelming for me afterwards, trying to describe to anyone else what it was that I was dealing with, because back in that day, like, the internet had just started. You know, there was emails and like chat forums. I had never been to a www dot anything. And I was interacting with a holographic tree where, you know, this branch was the knowledge of mathematics, and this branch is the knowledge of physics, and this branch is the history of English literature, and this branch is sociology, and each branch, you know, this branch branches off, and this is, you know, linear algebra, and this branch branches off, and, you know, breaking down the subject of mathematics into its compartments, and then within each of those, the lessons that make that up. And then as I'm exploring it, I can watch an instructional video and go, okay, so this is what this is about. But in the middle of that video, the teacher is saying something and relating to something that we learned like 2 years ago. And it's like, oh, how does factoring work again? And it's like, I could pause the video and it would immediately take me back to a different place where the information that that lesson is referring to is first laid out and organized and made clear. So I could go and refresh what factoring looks like, for example. And then when I got up to speed, I could go back to the conversation that I got lost in, and continue on as if I hadn't missed a beat. And I remember back in '93, like the concept of, wow, can you imagine learning this way and communicating this way and being able to share and organize information in this way? Like, that would change everything, like that. And be able to learn at your own pace, like not have to go at the pace of the rest of the class, like just, you know, pick and choose how quick you want to go and what you want to work on, and it's all like what you need right now. Wouldn't it be amazing to have that type of structure? So that was something that was first introduced to my thinking in 1993, and then from there I actually waited 7 years before I started teaching. I had a bunch of other things that I needed to explore and learn. And then I started teaching at Maple Ridge Christian School in the year 2000, and I taught there for 10 years. And then so the whole time I was teaching, I was learning how to teach the relational part of learning, like how important trust is, and the relationship between a teacher and a learner, and how to manage a class and how to organize, unit plans, lesson plans, year plans, evaluation, reporting to parents, how to weigh that all in. I, at that time, was trying to build that tree vision, sort of using Macromedia Dreamweaver and Fireworks back in the day, and putting in hot links. And there was only so much I could do. Like the vision was still way ahead of the technology. But through that, I learned a lot of really valuable skills, including, like, I got the okay to set up our own distributed learning center at the Christian school at that time, but administration decided not to invest in that direction. Yada yada. From there, the school downsized and I was laid off. And because I had a limited teaching certificate at that time, I didn't have my full teaching degree. I was laid off and I had to go back to university to get my teaching degree. So as a veteran teacher with 10 years experience, I went back to teachers college, with all the fresh young ones who had no experience. And for me, I recognized at that point, like, I was sitting in the first class that day at SFU, and the dean of education came up and did a speech. And he actually did a skit first where he had a bunch of people standing at the front holding hula hoops with hats on for different course parts of the program. And then a whole lineup of other people who would come up, and the person holding the hoop had someone there that would instruct everyone a little thing they had to do. And when they could do it correctly, they got to jump through the hoop and then on to the next hoop. And like some of the people who didn't do it correctly, they had to try again, and then they got to jump through the hoop. And I was watching this and just mortified, because originally when I did my teaching degree, actually, I didn't expect to be telling this story, but this is pertinent and relevant, so I'll continue on. When I first graduated in 1993, I was in the concurrent education program through Trent Queen's University, and I had done all the courses along my 4 years at university and all the practicums involved with that. And there was just a little bit of coursework and practicum left to do to finish up the teaching degree, go back to Queen's University for a year, but I was mostly done my education program. Also, at that time, I took a fourth year quantum mechanics course. And, in that fourth year, I got really burnt out. Like, I had been really successful in university up to that point, but I broke up with my girlfriend at the time. I was a little depressed about that. And I was just sort of academically and emotionally burnt out in life, and just not really all that enthralled with my learning. And with quantum mechanics, that year in particular, I really slacked off. In fact, I got through the course for the most part, just cashing in favors, because in the previous years, I had really helped out a lot of my classmates in the program because I was working really hard and on top of all my learning. And people would come to me who were struggling, and I would tutor them and help them, and help them make sense of it. So in that course, I'm like, okay, I'm struggling now, help me make sense of this. So I had people who were sort of really coaching me through the course, and I was doing the minimum amount of work needed just to scrape by. So I remember I was walking into the exam, and I had an A average of all my courses up to that point. And I was walking into my fourth year quantum mechanics course with a 60% average. So a C minus average, or C average. And I didn't feel great about it. And it was 3 days before the final exam. And I realized, you know what? I have no idea what this course is actually about. I don't actually get any of this. I've done so little. I haven't learned the material. But I also knew that within 3 days, I could get from there to know enough to be able to pass the course, pass the exam, pass the course, and be done my degree. And at that point, actually, I was thinking at that point, and this is before that vision, but I was already thinking at that point about the education system being about jumping through hoops, making people jump through hoops and, check the boxes and make sure you know how to do this and be able to demonstrate it, then we can pass you on the next thing. And I was really frustrated and passionate about the difference between the system of education that I was part of our generation, and the type of learning and passion for learning and the possibility of what education can and should be. Like, why do schools suck? Why is this educational process so grueling? Why are its rhythms not natural rhythms for my learning? Why do most of the time I just want to get through this as opposed to like coming and just excited to learn every day? And so here I was in a moral dilemma, thinking about education, being really passionate about what I believe in now, that education needs to not be jumping hoops. Education needs to be this exciting journey of discovery and passion and learning and sharing and creativity and this explosion of growth. And I was believing in education for intrinsic value, for education's sake, and yet I was participating in about to fake it on an exam enough to get my course, be through it, and actually not understand quantum mechanics. And this was like the flagship course of my entire physics undergraduate degree. I'd done one quantum mechanics course before, and I did really well at it. This was the fourth year level honors degree course level of quantum mechanics, and I had slacked. And I remember having an epiphany going, okay, this might be really crazy, but I'm going to go to my professor and I'm going to tell him I'm not going to attend. I'm not going to sit the final exam, and I'm going to ask him to fail me in the course. And I went into the professor, and Professor Ron Johnson, and fantastic man, fantastic teacher, great character, great integrity. I really appreciate Ron. But Professor Johnson looked at me and said, Michael, like 99% of students will never come back. Like, you need this course to finish your honors degree in physics. This is the important one. Like, are you sure about what you're doing here? Because 99% will never come back. And I looked him in the eye and I said, Ron, I'm going to be that 1%. So I skipped the exam, I failed the course, and I took off and I went to Vancouver that summer and ended up staying there for a couple of years and going in a completely different direction for a while. And then after 3 years, I went back to Trent University, signed up for fourth year quantum mechanics again. And it was Ron Johnson, Professor Ron Johnson was teaching the course again. And I signed up for the class. And I remember, like, the day before classes were supposed to start, I was just walking to the science building, like, just hadn't been in town for a long time, just refamiliarizing myself with the hallways. And I bumped into Professor Johnson, and he came right up to me and said, oh, Michael, I saw your name on the registry for this class, and I was so happy to see that you had signed up for it. And I just smiled and said, I told you I would be the one that comes back. So I retook the course. I didn't get an A, I got a B+. I finished with like 78% or 79, and at Trent, 80% is an A. So I was like right there. But you know what? I learned tons. I worked my butt off through that program. I met a new best friend and from that class. And we studied together, learned it, and had a great experience with it. And I'm so glad that I did that part of the process. So anyway, coming back to vision for education, what do I want to say? I want to say there's too much about education where it becomes this external, we got to measure up to these external structures. And sometimes in the pursuit of accomplishing the requirements for external structures, we lose sight of the true value of education, which is the passion for learning and the depth of learning that we get to take with us for the rest of our lives. And our students feel it too. If as a teacher, if I say, hey, today we've got to learn these outcomes, and I'm just like pushing, and it's one day after the next, like it can be a real grind, and the rhythm can be out of sync with the rhythm of the learner. And that's when school starts to suck, especially if there's a lot of pressure, timelines, yada, yada. it can become less exciting and a lot more of just pain in the butt. So that's the dynamic I'm looking to address. And from there, why don't I tell you a little bit about how I envision doing this better. So I remember back in about 2006, I started recording my classes with a video recorder from the back of the room. And so I teach math class, and then at the end of the class, I'd upload the recorded video to the internet so kids could go home and they could review the lesson that I had taught in class that day. So when they were working on their homework and stuck, it's like, oh, okay. Oh yeah, this is when Mr. Bruins taught it. It made sense there. Or what did he say we have to do with that again? And so I started doing that. And the students gave me really great feedback on that. They were like, oh, we love this. This is really good. And then the next year, I took all of the math lessons for the whole year and burned them onto DVDs. And I handed each student in the class, here's a physical DVD. Here's all the lessons for the whole course. Your homework now is to watch the lesson. And when you come to class the next day, you do what would have been the homework in class. So instead of me teaching the lesson, I'll do a quick, 4 or 5 minute review and then say, get to work on the homework. You guys can form groups, work together, help each other. If you need help, I'm here to ask help. And it became less about me delivering the content in the time I was with students and more about the students taking responsibility for doing their individual learning on their own, and then in the presence of the teacher, doing all the practice. So it became less about I need to listen, and then I've got 15 minutes at the end of class to try and get as much of the homework done so I don't have too much tonight. It was tonight I'm gonna watch a 20-minute video, and tomorrow I'm gonna come and work for the full hour in class. And I found that really, really effective. Most students preferred that, but not all students. And then over time, I've done different things with flipping classroom. And around that time, Khan Academy came up. And I remember looking at that going, this is interesting. Although, I'll talk about Khan Academy, in more detail at a different time. But in terms of overall vision for education and overall structure, what I began to recognize is the value of creating really good quality bite-sized segments of teaching instruction and organizing it in a very easy and natural to follow system where, here's the lesson, these are the outcomes we need to learn, here are the things, the details of that lesson, here's how to do it, here's this twist, here's a different way a question can be asked, here's the procedural mechanics that you need in order to learn this mathematical concept. So having that structure in place and on demand is incredibly valuable. However, that is not the whole piece of learning. There's a couple other pieces to make a good education system. In my opinion, the future of education is content on demand in a way where I can approach a website or a resource and within 5 seconds find exactly the lesson I'm looking for. So that how to organize that so that that's even possible, that's something that's part of that original vision I had back in 1993. But having the content there and available on demand is piece number one. Piece number two is having learning community. Learning groups are groups of people to learn with, to ask questions of. The opportunity for learners to be able to teach other learners and learn from other learners is incredibly important. The value of having an expert who's available is incredibly important. So there's the aspect of the content, the information, to be able to receive that and understand what's being said. Then there's the aspect of the practice and the community element of learning, the give and take, the working out, the processing, the applying the idea and applying it to challenges, the ability to get help when stuck, and work together as a group. That's an incredibly important piece. So that's piece number two. So piece number one is the structure and on-demand content. Piece number two is the community and learning environment. Piece number three. Piece number three is something that wasn't really on my radar very much until a couple years ago. And so in 2014, I started working at Meadow Ridge School in Maple Ridge, BC. Meadow Ridge School, wow. Like for my career, such a delight and joy to have had that experience. I had this fantastic classroom that was literally decked out with all the best science gear that any teacher could want for a science lab. I had laser leveling, I had Vernier and Pasco automated data collection units. I had, any lab equipment I requested. I had a large budget for lab equipment and sufficient to provide all the students in my class with great equipment. Plus I had this patio off the side door of the classroom that was the upstairs patio. It was on top of the roof of like some of the admin building, and it was massive. It was even bigger than my classroom. So I had a dry erase board installed right to the outside wall. It was all patio tiles, so I could use it as an XY grid, and I'd have students moving around in the Cartesian plane and learning their mathematics spatially. I actually had some of the tiles painted in black and white so we could get a long garden chess set up there, and had the chess club operated out of there. So it was a fantastic environment. Plus, the IB system is really, in many ways, very cutting edge in their approach to learning. And the thing I took from that is my point number three here, is the project-based learning. So by that, I mean, like in the IB system, it's K to 12 education is broken into three segments. So you have your primary years, your middle years, and then your diploma program. So at the end of your primary years in the IB system, so in grade 5, every IB primary years program learner in grade 5 does a major group project. And I believe it's done in groups of 4 or 5, and it's prepared for over a course of months. And like students they form their groups, they come up with their own original ideas of what they want to do to accomplish the outcomes that they need for this project. They work in collaboration with other learners, and they put together a massive project that is then celebrated within the community, where parents can come into the gym and see the projects. They're formally evaluated by groups of teachers, and there's that feedback, and it's a fantastic learning opportunity. In the middle years program for the IB, so that goes grades 6 to 10, at the end of the middle years program in grade 10, all grade 10 students are required to do something that's called the personal project, which is an individual project of a similar nature. In grade 10 in the IB program, at the beginning of the year, each student is matched with a teacher supervisor and begins to plan and execute that plan of a major project, which by the end of the year is a major piece of the learning portfolio. So that major project could be anything. It could be, I'm a fencer and I've decided I want to learn fencing at a higher level and create a beginner's guide to people who are thinking about learning how to fence. So this is the way I would organize. First you got to learn your footwork. Here are your attacking moves. Here are your defensive moves. Here's how to put it in combination. At a beginner level, like that would be useful for someone who's just entering the sport. So like I remember I was supervising a student, and that was one of their personal projects. So their outcome for the personal project was the finished product of their book, their instructional book, but their documentation process of how did they get to that level? what was their process of learning the further learning that they needed to do, where were they at when they started the project, what further learning did they need to do, what was the process of organizing, compiling, and publishing their book. What would they do with that going forward? Is this a business venture? Et cetera, et cetera. So that's the personal project, and that's the end of the middle years. And then the diploma program. In the IB, in the diploma program, project-based learning is broken down like this. So every diploma program student has to do what's called an extended essay. So for that, every student has to write one major essay in the ballpark of 20 pages on one topic, one subject, and they get partnered with a teacher from that subject to write this major research paper. And so that's the extended essay. And then in each of their subjects, there are different types of individual internal assessments. In some subject areas, it's not called an internal assessment. There are different things for like English and whatnot, but in math and the sciences, it's called an internal assessment. And so the internal assessment needs to be an original investigation of a topic of the student's choosing that uses content from the course. And so, for example, in mathematics, some of the internal assessments that I've supervised, like I remember I had one student who was really struggling with math and not a good math student in terms of having success and getting good marks and stuff. She was struggling, but did the best internal assessment ever on researching the question, who was the best Saturday Night Live host of all time? And this student came up with an idea to mine data from a Saturday Night Live fan site and go through all of the seasons, examine who were the hosts of those seasons, and do a statistical analysis using a box and whisker plot of the data for like ratings for each episode of that season, and then took the 4 hosts that she thought were most likely to be the best ones: John Belushi, Eddie Murphy, Tina Fey, and I forget who her 4th one was. And so she took the statistical data from the fans' reactions to the episodes of the seasons that each of those hosts were hosts for, and then compiled all of those statistics into an overall profile for each individual host. And then using that profile, had some numbers to quantitatively compare the different hosts and how fans reacted to the episodes during the seasons while they were the host. And it was just a fantastic, it was just hit a home run. It was amazing. And the fact that this student was able to take a question that was so subjective and using the skills that were taught in the course, be able to come up with a really solid answer to the question, who was the best host, and be able to weigh out her confidence in the method she had used and the overall thing, with very good confidence, I would say James Belushi was in fact the top Saturday Night Live host of all time, and for these reasons, and that, these are the limitations, and this is the degree of confidence. So that's an example of a project-based learning in a subject like mathematics, where you've got the 3rd piece of education. Just to recap, first piece is the structure and the content on delivery. Second piece is the learning community. And the 3rd piece is the ability to be creative, where through project-based learning, we are using the educational content in practical, real-life ways. So project-based learning is absolutely a key to good education. So in terms of the overall picture of what am I hoping to accomplish here, I want to have some of my own work in creating structure for content delivery. Yes, I have lots of little clips of me teaching lots of concepts. I'd love to, at some point, compile what I have and then fill in all the gaps and like take, for example, math education from grade 8 to grade 12 and teach every concept along the way and organize it all so that in the middle of this grade 11 math lesson on this topic, if you're lost right here, you can go back to, oh yeah, prime factorization, what you were working on in grade 8, how to take a number and break it down into its factors and break it down until you've got all its prime factors and how that relates to, this concept in, factoring higher degree polynomials, make all the connections, deliver all the content and make all the connections and make that available. So that's one piece I'd like to do, but I'm also recognizing there's a lot of instruction already available. I'd love to, working with a learning community, begin to mine and harvest and link in, hey, here's a really good learning resource, and to be able to employ some of the stuff that's going on at the Khan Academy, which there's some good quality there. However, I have this criticism: a lot of the instructional videos that are being produced there, I don't think are as good as what I can do. I will definitely throw my own stuff into the mix, but I'd like to create a structure and a system that isn't just my work and it isn't just the work of people I'm working with, but I'd like to use what's available already and what's already accessible, and just create a structure that organizes it in a really sweet fashion so that any learner can go, I need to learn this concept, and can very quickly find a variety of resources that will help them learn exactly that content. Something I'd love to do with that is like color code different types of resources according to the style of presentation and the type of learner that tends to like this teacher, because this teacher teaches in a very visual way. So learners who learn very visually, that's their primary learning style, tend to really like this presentation, whereas this teacher is a great auditory teacher, speaks very clearly, gives very clear instructions. Someone who listens learns in an auditory fashion can listen and really lock and load with this teacher because of the way they present. So that would be color coded in a different color. All of that stuff is available or is possible to build within the structure so that individual learners can over time get a sense of, oh, I tend to like the teachers that are more in the purple area of the spectrum, that have that type of delivery style that tends to work for me better. So now when I'm learning new content and I see, hey, here's 10 different options of resources to help me learn this, I'm going to try this first because most likely that'll gel with me. But maybe there are ways to help people find in any given situation, maybe I want to try this one this time for this reason. So that's the structure. The community piece, that's something that needs to be created in community. So that's something I'm really looking forward to connecting with people through the live stuff. So apparently I thought this was going to be a live Zoom session, and either no one's come or the link didn't work, and I'm just talking to the camera alone. So this isn't really a live, but when as community begins to form, then we can brainstorm, how can we use technology where geography is no longer a factor that separates who can be in my learning pod and in my learning group, and how do we create the type of community that allows for a flow of possibility where we can form safe and effective learning communities that are positive and beneficial, that help support that second factor. And then on top of that, what I hope to do primarily through the Tuesday virtual classroom is to work with learning groups, work with learning pods or individuals, and create project-based suggestions. Here is, here, let me give you an example. So something I could come up with, I was thinking about before this that I would come up with is related to that big painting I was showing at the beginning of this video. So the camera on this laptop is not going to do it for you in terms of really helping you see the level of detail that's in this painting, but I'll hopefully be able to give you a bit of an idea of what I'm talking about. Okay, so it's blurry and a little bit too bright, but there's actually a tremendous amount of color and detail and hidden images and all kinds of crazy stuff going on in this painting. So as an example of how does that relate to project-based learning, Michael? I'm not sure I'm with you on this. So step one that I would think to do with a group of learners is to get a really good quality digital image, like not necessarily even just a photo, like get a professional scan in as high resolution as possible, and then have once that scan's available, like one example could be take all the colors that like Photoshop, if you click on the color wheel and break down, like for each pixel on the that you drag your mouse in the color rainbow spectrum, you've got that box, which is a grid of, I don't know, 30 by 30 different shades within that color family. So of all the colors that Microsoft or that Adobe Photoshop can recognize and present, ask a computer to analyze a painting like that and say how many different recognizable shades of color are within that painting, and then do a comparison to other works of art, and then like maybe create a hot map where pixel by pixel, you look at this pixel and you say, of the 8 pixels around that, how many different colors are there, on a pixel by pixel rate basis, 1 millimeter square by 1 millimeter square. And so like in this pixel, maybe it's got 4 different recognizable colors in the pixels around it. And in this pixel, it's got 2 different recognizable colors of the pixels around it. And this one, 0 or just 1. And this one, all 8 are different. So to do a hot map of the color density and the changing of the colors square millimeter by square millimeter across the painting, and then statistically analyze or use that to analyze how does the degree of color use of this painting compare to other works of art, to other artists, other styles. So, that's one example of how to take something like that and turn it into a project. So maybe one learner would take that data and create a hot map and do that for other paintings, and create a project where they create a comparison and draw a conclusion based on what they learn. But maybe another student is going to look at that in a totally different way and going to go, I see all these little faces everywhere and different ways to look at the painting. So I'm going to count how many faces can I identify within this painting at all different levels of zoom, and then compare that to any other paintings that have that, how many faces are visible in this painting compared to other works of art. Or another student might, be looking at balance and get an element of art theory, saying, how is this element of balance within art theory demonstrated within this work, and how does that compare to other works? So from one scanned image of a painting, right there, I can think of 3 completely different topics or for projects based on that image. So what I think is exciting is to create opportunities and suggestions of, here are some things you could do with this in a project-based setting, either in a group or as an individual. Here's how to document the process. Here's how to prepare a presentation. Here's how to work on those skills of like the thing that the IB does really well is the rubrics that their projects are marked against are really clear, well-defined, very intentional, and actually lead the learning in fantastic ways. So creating an opportunity for a project where an individual can go, I see that, and I don't think of it that way. I think of it this way, and I want to run off to the races and do an exploration. The same set of rubrics will work for that project that would work for the first project who was going to do just a numerical analysis of, the number of colors in the painting. Same set of rubrics will guide the learning in completely different ways, but in both cases will give the opportunity to work on communication skills, will get the opportunity to work on presentation skills, reflection, analysis. There's all sorts of different elements of learning that can be embedded into any creative project. And so that's something that I really appreciated while I was teaching in the IB system. But since I've stepped away from there, I went and taught middle school for a couple of years. That's where I did the robotics and digital literacy and some PE and some English and a little bit of math and other stuff. But as I've had some time to step away from the IB system, the value of the creativity that could come in open-ended project-based learning has impressed on me more and more that it's a critically important part of education. And that's why I would sort of put it as the third point in the trinity of elements to good learning, which is the availability of content in a well-organized fashion, the availability of community for supporting learning, and the availability of open-ended project-based learning that inspires creativity. When we've got all three of those things working in natural rhythms, then we want to learn. Then learning is exhilarating. Then it's like, okay, it's a new day. Oh, it's an opportunity. I want to learn more. What can I learn today? It's when we are locked into that sort of linear traditional system of education where here's the list of outcomes we need to learn for the course. Here's how far we've got. Okay, next lesson today. Everyone's doing it, lock and load. And it's just like, drools going down my chin and just like, why do I have to learn this? What's this even for? I have no idea what's going on. There's a time for direct instruction, but the time for direct instruction is when I need it. When I'm getting direct instruction and I'm not needing it right now, or it's not relevant to me, or it's not where my learning cycle is. Maybe, I saw my dog get hit by a car this morning. I'm in a terrible space and, I probably shouldn't even be at school. The last thing I want to do is sit there and listen to this lecture. So breaking out of the mold of, that linear structure to, get the direct instruction into your head needs to happen. So there's a time when, okay, I've got a project, for example, and it's like, okay, for what I have this question now, I'm here, and in order to get to where I want to do, I need to be able to somehow accomplish this task. How could I accomplish that task? Oh, well, you could accomplish that task if you use linear algebra and create a map in this way. Boom, here's the language and the learning that would allow you to accomplish what you want to do. However, that's above your level. Your level's here. You need to upscale your understanding of linear algebra to this level so you can apply it in your project here and it'll make sense. So now I've got a project that I'm working on. I'm, got problems and challenges that are exciting me. They're getting my neurons firing. I'm making progress. I'm taking initiative. It's my own learning. I want to know the answer to my question, and I'm stumped. Now, the learning community, the mentor says, oh, you need to upgrade up level to this level of skill. Now I go to the content and say, okay, I'm at this level of skill, I need to get here. So let's lock and load. As soon as I'm here, I can continue on with my project. That takes out, why am I learning this? It's like, oh, I need this. Okay, so I'm gonna just, do I got it? Do I got it? Do I got it? Practice it until I've got it. Ah, now I've got it. Now I come back to my project and I use that new skill I've just learned to carry my project to the next level. So the dream, the vision is to begin to strip courses down and to their learning objectives, to supplement that with project-based learning, have the right learning community, have some direct instruction and some time to access direct instruction, and have a natural rhythm that allows me to learn what I'm ready to learn today, every day. And sometimes that'll be in one subject at a time. Sometimes, you know what, I'm not ready to learn math or work on my science project or do any of that today. What I need is a day of like just doing some art where I need to just like decompress and do that. So learning to create an education system that allows that type of flexibility and autonomy for each learner's natural rhythms, and learning how to create learning communities that support that type of flexibility and play, that can restructure for the sake of the group, a little bit of order and organization where there's a little bit of imposed structure on the overall group, but then within that, lots of individual freedom for students to work at their own pace, on their own learner, in their own ways, and also have opportunities to come together with other learners. So that's the vision that the TreeRoot virtual classroom is all about, and the community that I'm looking to form here. And yeah, so I've been talking for almost an hour with no feedback or interaction. I love it. I've got one or two more little things that I'll go on about, and I'll probably end this, try to wrap this up in 1 hour instead of the full 2 that I have scheduled, just because there's no interaction. So the last couple things I want to talk about is the value of portfolio-based learning and project-based learning. I see for the future, it's going to be less about, you know, do you have these courses, and more about what are your skills? What are your abilities? What have you already done? What can you come and bring to a new situation, whether it's a new job or a new problem at work? What can you bring to the table? What's your skill set, and how well can you continue to learn and grow? And the value of portfolio building is, one, it's incredibly valuable for me as a learner to document what my process is, because over time, I'm going to forget that, oh yeah, I did that project back in grade 5 on pronghorns. And the pronghorn is this African continental antelope that has these characteristics, yada, yada. So like, I forget the learning I've done if I don't have the documentation of it. So having a documentation of my process is valuable, and then learning how to take the documentation in my portfolio and create very succinct summaries that can, for the purpose of good communication to someone else. Okay, you know, here's a quick, you know, smackling of my experience and skill set. That as a communication tool, using my portfolio as a communication tool becomes really valuable for someone to quickly assess, oh, this is what this individual is bringing to the table, and oh, this is what I'm bringing to the table, and I see, oh, there's some overlap, we know some of the same stuff, but they know something I don't know, and I know something they don't know, and how do we exchange and share that? So in terms of work communities, adult relational communities, learning communities, and higher education in the future, I see more of a necessity for recognition of our individual learning journeys, and more clarity around exactly where we are in terms of what our skills are and where we need to go or hope to go next, and a better recognition that we don't need everyone on the planet to be able to do integral calculus. It's just not necessary. Lots of people never going to learn integral calculus and going to be just fine. That said, integral calculus, man, that's such great stuff. And what that does for our ability to use language and to solve problems is wonderful. And, you know, if that's something that interests you, like, it's great to know about that. But the point is, the needs of every learner are very unique and individual for that person, based on who they are, what their strengths and weaknesses are, and what their choices are, what their interests and desires are. If I'm like really sure I want to become a police officer, you know, maybe I could do integral calculus and find it kind of interesting, but I'm going to choose perhaps not to invest as much energy there and then be investing energy in other directions, because I've got sort of a warrior spirit. So I'm going to be doing more, you know, stuff that's physical, related to body knowledge, self-defense, et cetera, et cetera. So the importance and value of each individual learner being able to custom tailor their own educational program in a way that is unique to them, and then having a portfolio that reflects their unique learning journey is the future of education. That's how we do education better. Cookie cutter methods of educating the masses was great. That factory model worked great in the Industrial Revolution in the early ages of education, but I think we all recognize that that is no longer a ideal model for education for the modern world. So yeah, that's what I want to say about that. Last point I'll bring up just really briefly. You know, there's all sorts of things that are popping off in my head, other things to talk about, but I'll try and, like I said, keep this to within the hour. So I've got 3 minutes left here. The last thing I'll just sort of throw out there briefly, especially for homeschooling parents. So if you're watching this and you're a homeschooling parent, you're wondering, okay, how does this fit into what I need to do or what I hope to do with my children in their education? One thing that I'll mention is, when I was a principal in Saskatchewan, I had a couple students who needed a few more credits to get their diploma, but they were struggling with the academic options that were available to them. In 2 cases that I can remember, they were students that were not likely to have been successful in any of the options that were available to them at the school. So what I did was I did some research into how to create an individualized course learning program for an individual student, and how to get that accredited so it would count for course credits towards their diploma. So I had one student who came up, her and I together, in partnership with the Early Childhood Learning Center in the school that was providing childcare for the town. We came up with an individualized learning program for this young lady who would volunteer an hour or 2 a day in the preschool, working with the preschool instructors, accomplishing her educational goals towards her early childhood education. And we created our own high school level early childhood education course for her to do, which she got full credit for. Another student did a program that was already, like, the structure of it was already available through the ministry for farmers, and he did a specialization in beef farming and was doing a whole bunch of the learning about how to set up a beef farm. His dad was a beef farmer, so he was learning about beef farming and the options and the best technologies and the best information about agriculture and beef, how it applied to beef farming, and getting course credit towards his diploma in doing that. So I'm just going to throw that out there, a really valuable thing for the homeschooling community, as well as for public education systems that are open to being creative in how they approach things, is the possibility of creating custom tailored learning paths for students that allow them to get course credits that work towards recognized certification for diplomas and further education. So I got a lot more I could say about that, but it's been an hour and I'm gonna tap out at this point. And for those of you who have made it to the end, welcome. I'm so glad to be have an audience and to connect. And I'm so optimistic about what the future holds and what we can do when we start to work in collaboration and work in partnership and dream together and then make it happen. So the goal is for me to make myself available every week at this time and to sometimes to plan some stuff and say, hey, this week we're going to do, bookmaking, or this week we're going to do some math lessons on these topics, or this week we're going to do a project, or this week we're going to do some self-defense or whatever. So I'm looking forward to that, and just to also have the community where it's like show up and it's like, oh, this person's showing up and has this question, and that's just inspiring something, brand new that wasn't planned and going in a completely different direction. So really looking forward to that, and hope to see you soon. Okay, peace out.